Bianca Wren's fingers tightened around the gold-embossed resignation form until her knuckles blanched white. The new tinted gel polish on her nails was a hair's breadth from tearing through the paper. Those eyes, sharp, calculating, the same eyes that could silence a boardroom full of old money executives with a single glance, now bored into me. Disbelief flickered behind them. And something else. Something she probably hadn't felt in years. Offense. Raw, incredulous offense. I placed the last of my personal items into a cardboard box. A battered thermos, 5 years old, its matte finish worn smooth in patches from countless late nights. I shut the trunk of my car. Early autumn wind swept through the sycamore trees, dragging a few brittle leaves across the cold marble steps of the city clerk's office. The divorce agreement has been reviewed by your attorney. Asset division is straightforward. I'm walking away with nothing except the car in my name and my premarital savings. HR will process the resignation paperwork. My voice came out level. The same tone I'd used 1,000 times delivering weekly reports that no one really read. Bianca,
I've already signed.
I'll be waiting inside. I turned, box cradled against my chest, and reached for the car door. Lucian, her stilettos, custom Italian leather, 7 millimeters of precision engineering, cracked against the stone steps as she stumbled down 2 of them. The sound was sharp, frantic, utterly out of character. She grabbed my arm. Her grip was shockingly strong, fingers digging into the fabric of my jacket. Her breathing had gone uneven. Because of last night? The words tumbled out too fast. Because I worked late? Because I asked Victor into my office to go over the merger documents? That's what this is about. I stopped.
Turned.
Looked at her. Her makeup was still flawless. It always was, but I could see the faint gray-blue shadows beneath her eyes.
No sleep.
That haute couture skirt suit she wore cost more than most people made in a year. It made her look powerful, untouchable, the youngest CEO in Whitmore Group's history, the queen of an empire she'd built with iron discipline and 80-hour work weeks. And me, I was the blur in the background of every photograph, the husband who'd gotten lucky, the office assistant in her executive suite who everyone assumed was coasting on his wife's coattails. I watched her pupils dilate with urgency. Watched her search my face for the punchline to a joke she couldn't understand. Yeah, I said quietly. That's why. I pulled my arm free, got into the driver's seat. The engine hummed to life, a low vibration in the silence. In the rearview mirror, she stood frozen on the courthouse steps. Something had drained out of her all at once. That perpetual look of absolute control, the expression she wore like armor, had cracked open. Beneath it was something she probably hadn't felt in a very long time. Confusion. Blank, uncomprehending confusion. And beneath that, just starting to surface, the first raw edge of panic. She would never understand how something so small, so insignificant, so utterly reasonable in her world, could be the final straw that broke 5 years of marriage. She didn't know what lay beneath that straw. And she had no idea how long I'd been standing at the edge of the cliff, staring down. The 5th anniversary of our secret marriage fell on a Tuesday. I sat alone in the living room. The television was tuned to a business news channel. Bianca filled the screen, draped in sapphire velvet, her arm linked through that of some silver-haired industry titan. A charity gala, red carpet.
Camera flashes.
She tilted her head at just the right angle, smiled with just the right measure of warmth and distance. The media loved that smile. They called her the face of the new generation of female leadership. On the dining table, 5 dishes and a soup I'd spent the afternoon preparing had long since gone cold. The artisanal candle in the center had burned down to a misshapen puddle of wax. 11:27 p.m. My phone glowed. A message from her executive assistant. Asterisk Mr. Crown, Ms. Runn has an urgent overseas video conference this evening. She will likely stay at her apartment near the office afterward. No need to wait up, asterisk. Polite. Thorough. Beyond reproach. Like every other canceled dinner, forgotten date, and abandoned vacation plan over the past 5 years. I typed back a single word. Okay. Then I stood up and scraped the cold food into the trash. Sticky sauce clung to the rim of the bin. I wiped it clean with a paper towel, folded the towel, threw it away. On screen, the host was narrating Whitmore Group's latest international expansion with breathless enthusiasm. Visionary leadership, he said. Extraordinary strategic courage. The camera panned to Bianca's mother. Diana Leong, dripping with jade and quiet menace, sat in the audience, radiating pride. The pigeon egg emerald ring on her finger caught the light. My phone buzzed again. A deposit notification from my bank. The first of the month, like clockwork. A generous sum of money transferred from Bianca's private account to mine. This was the arrangement Diana had established the day we signed our marriage license in secret. Asterisk, Bianca works too hard to worry about household finances. Since you don't have much earning potential, you'll manage the home. This monthly deposit is for household expenses and pocket money. Asterisk, pocket money. The phrase had lodged itself in my throat 5 years ago. Not sharp enough to kill, just sharp enough to ache every time I swallowed. I turned off the TV. Darkness swallowed the room. Through the windows, the city's skyline glittered. A million lights that had nothing to do with me. 5 years ago, I'd been top of my class at one of the country's best law schools. I had offers from every major firm worth their billable hours. Then I attended an alumni event, and I met Bianca Wren, then just the general manager of Whitmore Group, buried in a cross-border lawsuit that was bleeding the company dry. I helped her untangle a legal knot. She looked at me differently after that. The rest was cliché. She pursued. Her family resisted. Diana Leong had pointed at me across a restaurant table and said, "Lucian, you seem like a nice young man, but my daughter is going to run a business empire. Her husband needs to either bring something to the table, connections, capital, influence, or he needs to stay out of the way. No complications. No distractions." Bianca had held my hand and said, with absolute certainty, "Mom, I want him. He gives me something no one else can. Emotional support. Emotional support." Such a modern, evolved phrase. Back then, I'd mistaken it for love. So I let go of the best career launchpad a law graduate could ask for. I accepted Bianca's arrangement. A low-profile administrative role in Whitmore Group's executive office. A secret marriage license. A prenuptial agreement thick as a phone book. She provided comfort, security, the trappings of a life most people would envy. And I became her stable foundation. I was supposed to listen when she was exhausted, soothe when she was stressed, appear when she needed me, disappear when she didn't. 5 years. The bright, ambitious legal mind I'd been had withered into the office's quiet ghost. Coworkers joked about my good luck. They called me Mr. Wren behind my back. My expertise, my credentials, my ambitions, they gathered dust while I fetched coffee, organized files, and memorized the birthdays and preferences of every person in Bianca's orbit. At first, she'd apologized. "Lucian, I know this isn't ideal. Once things settle down, I'll..." Then the apologies thinned out, replaced by habit, expectation, the unspoken assumption that this was just how things were. Late nights, when she'd come home reeking of whiskey and I'd have hot soup waiting. Afternoons when she'd snap at someone in the office and I'd materialize with warm water and the exact right words to defuse her. Family dinners where Diana Leong would hint, not subtly, about grandchildren and how Bianca certainly couldn't be expected to slow down. And wasn't it wonderful that Lucian had so much free time? I tried to push back. Around year 3, I told Bianca I wanted to move into the legal department. Start with something small. Even compliance work. She didn't look up from her documents. "Lucian, we're in a critical phase. I don't have bandwidth for disruptions at home. The legal team works brutal hours. If you join them, who's going to manage things? Besides, you're comfortable now. No stress. Enough money. Why complicate things?" Diana found out. She called me that same evening. "Lucian, honey, a word of advice." Her voice was syrup laced with steel. Learn to be content. Bianca's given you the easiest path imaginable. Do you know how many people would kill for your life? You want to go back to office politics, grinding away so people can see you taking orders from bosses half your age? How do you think that would reflect on Bianca? That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror. The man looking back at me had eyes I barely recognized.
Dimmer than they used to be.
Softer at the edges. That was the first time I understood, with perfect clarity, that I was living in a gilded cage. And Bianca, the woman I'd once believed was my partner, was holding the key. She just never thought to use it. Maybe she assumed the bird inside was too well fed to remember it had wings. The straws had been piling up for years. A week after the anniversary, Bianca came home at a reasonable hour for once. Her mother and younger sister were coming for dinner. I was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, working through a pile of vegetables. Celine Wren, the sister, walked in without removing her heels. She stopped at the edge of the open kitchen, wrinkled her nose, and made a show of fanning the air. God, what is that smell? Oil everywhere. Bianca, seriously, hire a housekeeper already. This is embarrassing. A man spending his whole day hovering over a stove. Where's the dignity in that? Bianca was on the sofa, scrolling through her tablet. She didn't look up. He likes cooking. It relaxes him. Diana Leong changed into guest slippers and drifted over to inspect my work. Her eyes swept across the cutting board. The shrimp veins aren't fully removed. And this beef. Why are you cutting it into chunks?
Bianca preferred in slices, against the grain.
Light marinade. My knife paused mid-motion. Noted. I'll do better next time. Next time, Celine snorted. She draped herself across the arm of Bianca's sofa. Sis, look at Mom's new bracelet. That luster? Mrs. Wong just brought it back from Myanmar. Cost a fortune. Mom picked up one for you, too. She left it in your dressing room. Bianca glanced over, smiled faintly. You shouldn't have, Mom. I never get a chance to wear things like that. Nonsense. Good things belong to my daughters. Diana beamed. Then her gaze slid sideways, landed on me, and sharpened by a fraction. Speaking of which, Celine's been seeing someone. A young man named Grant. Families in construction materials. Not our league, of course, but he's ambitious. Just launched his own project. Seems promising. Young people should have drive. Celine tossed her hair. Grant's dad says if this project takes off, he's buying us a Porsche. Lucian, you've been driving that same Audi for, 5 years now? Maybe Bianca can get you an upgrade. I said nothing. The beef went onto the plate in neat, identical slices. Bianca's voice cut through flat. A car gets you from point A to point B. Lucian doesn't need flashy things. You spoil him too much, Celine muttered. Men need ambition. Status. Look at him, top law school, and now he's basically a housewife. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Her smile was sweet and poisonous. It's called division of labor, right, Mom? Bianca conquers the world. Lucian holds down the fort. Everyone has their role. Diana nodded approvingly.
Exactly.
A household needs someone inside and someone outside. Bianca was born for bigger things. Lucian's contribution is making sure nothing distracts her from that. Contribution. I set the plates on the table and let the word roll around in my head. At dinner, Diana steered the conversation to grandchildren. You're 30 now, Bianca. The clock doesn't wait. I know you're busy, but once the baby's here, you won't have to lift a finger. We'll hire a nanny. Lucian will be home anyway, and I'll be around to supervise. Bianca frowned. Mom, the overseas expansion is at a make-or-break stage. I don't have the bandwidth for pregnancy, let alone an infant. Besides Lucian. Lucian has nothing but time. Diana cut in. Her eyes swiveled to me with a benevolence that felt like a door slamming shut. It's harder work than it looks, raising a child, but it's for your own family. That makes it worthwhile. You won't have to worry about money. Diapers, private schools, tutors. Bianca's got it covered. Your job will be to raise the child. That's your real contribution to this family. Celine piled on. Seriously, Lucian, some people would kill for that setup. Working moms out there are running themselves ragged. Bianca's giving you the easiest gig in the world. I set down my chopsticks, wiped my mouth with a napkin. The table went quiet for just a moment. Bianca's gaze flicked toward me. Something in my expression must have registered because her voice softened slightly.
Mom, Celine.
We'll talk about children later. Let's just eat. Diana looked annoyed but let it drop. Later that night, Bianca finished her skincare routine and sat on the edge of the bed, watching me organize the closet. This was unusual. Normally, she'd be back on her laptop by now, firing off emails until she passed out. Lucian. Her voice carried exhaustion. What Mom and Celine said earlier, don't take it to heart. You know how they are. I was facing away from her, hanging a pressed dress shirt. The kid thing, I know you've been patient, but I really can't step away from the company right now. She paused, searching for the right words. Give it 2 more years. Once everything's stable, I promise I'll... Bianca. I cut her off, turned around. She blinked. Something about hearing her full name from my mouth seemed to jar her. Do you remember what I studied in college? Another blink, a slight crease between her brows.
Law.
Why are you asking that now? No reason. I smiled and turned back to the closet. Get some sleep. She stayed there, sitting on the bed, staring at my back. I could feel her gaze. Maybe she thought I was sulking, fishing for reassurance, needing another dose of that emotional support she believed she provided. But after a long moment, she just sighed. I heard the soft tap of her fingers on her phone screen. Email. Always email. I closed the closet door quietly. In the dressing room, my section was small, a fraction of the space Bianca's wardrobe occupied. The clothes were expensive, replaced seasonally by Bianca's personal shopper. Tasteful, coordinated, and utterly impersonal. In the corner sat an old leather briefcase, edges worn soft. My law school mentor had given it to me the day I graduated. Inside were my bar credentials and a stack of printed legal analyses I'd written as a student, analyses that had once been cited by professors as some of the sharpest work they'd seen. Dust had settled on the handle. Victor Tang joined the executive office 3 months ago. Foreign MBA.
Sharp. Polished.
Exceptional at international negotiations. Bianca had poached him from a rival firm with a compensation package that turned heads. He became her right hand almost instantly. They worked late together, traveled together, spoke in a shorthand of jargon and mutual understanding that shut everyone else out. The office gossiped. Power couple. Perfect match. Did you see the way he looks at her? Nobody said it to my face, but they didn't have to. I heard the conversations that stopped when I walked by. I saw the looks. Curious, pitying, amused. Bianca didn't notice. Or didn't care. Her focus was absolute. Victor was a scalpel she wielded in the operating room of corporate warfare. I was furniture in the waiting room. Last week was her birthday. I'd booked a table at her favorite French restaurant, the one with a view of the river, the one you had to reserve 3 weeks in advance. I tracked down a necklace from an independent designer, inspired by a vintage piece she'd admired years ago. Not flashy, thoughtful, the kind of gift that said I remember. The afternoon of, I texted her. Asterisk 7 o'clock. Our spot. Got the corner table. Asterisk. She replied almost immediately. Asterisk great. Might be a little late. Busy day. Asterisk. At 7, I was at the table. The city lights shimmered on the water below. A server came by 3 times to ask if I was ready to order. I told him I was waiting for someone. 7:30. I sent a message. How far out are you? No response. 8 o'clock. I called. It rang 6 times before she picked up. Background noise, voices, the shuffle of papers, the unmistakable hum of the office. Lucian, I'm so sorry. Emergency meeting. The overseas team hit a snag. I don't think I can make it. Her voice was frayed, distracted. Just eat without me. I'll look at the gift when I get home. Okay. I hung up, sat there for a long time, watching the candle on the table flicker. Then I motioned the server over and ordered the prix for one. Ate every course. Paid the bill. Left a generous tip. At 11, I drove to the office. The light in the top floor corner suite was still on. I sat in the parking lot and watched. Didn't go up. Didn't call again. A little past 1 in the morning, the light went out. 20 minutes later, Bianca and Victor emerged from the lobby together. They were still talking, debriefing, strategizing, Victor gesturing with his laptop under one arm. Bianca rubbed her temples, weary but wired, the way she always was after a breakthrough. Victor opened the car door for her, his hand hovering briefly at the small of her back. She accepted the gesture without breaking stride. The black sedan pulled away. I followed at a distance. They stopped at a 24-hour diner near the office. Through the plate glass window, I watched them slide into a booth. Victor leaned over to pour her soup. She smiled at him, a tired, unguarded smile I hadn't seen directed at me in a very long time. I turned the car around and went home. She didn't come back that night. At 3 in the morning, her assistant's automated message arrived. Asterisk Mr. Crown. Ms. Runn is resting at her office apartment. No cause for concern. Asterisk. I sat in the dark living room, holding my old thermos. There was a small dent near the base, a scar from the first year of our marriage. I'd stayed up all night helping her draft a critical risk assessment memo. At some point, I'd knocked the thermos off the desk. She glanced at the clatter and said, "Careful. That model's discontinued. Hard to replace." Over the years, she'd bought me newer, sleeker replacements. Expensive imports. Smart mugs with temperature control. I never used any of them. Just this one. As the sky started to pale, I walked to the study and opened a drawer I hadn't touched in months. The lock was biometric. Inside was a carefully organized collection of documents. On top, a copy of our prenuptial agreement, signed 5 years ago. Below that, meticulous records I'd kept. Household expenses I'd covered with my premarital savings and some discreet investment returns. Audio recordings of conversations with Diana and Celine, dates, times, the specific flavor of their condescension, compiled as a matter of professional habit and quiet self-protection. Bank statements demonstrating complete financial independence from Bianca and Whitmore Group. A trail of evidence proving I'd never benefited beyond the household allowance I was given. And beneath it all, a draft divorce agreement prepared a month ago by an attorney who specialized in high-net-worth marital dissolution. And an offer letter, 5 years old. Still valid. I'd confirmed it recently. Senior associate position, Asia Pacific Division, one of the most prestigious international law firms in the world. The ink on the signature line had been dry since the week before I agreed to join Whitmore Group instead. I traced the embossed letterhead with my fingertip, then locked everything away again. Almost time. Just one more spark. The spark came the very next night. Bianca stayed late again, grinding through the final hurdles of her merger. Around 9, she messaged that I shouldn't wait up. Around 11, I realized I needed to double-check a contract clause for something a colleague in the office had asked me about. People in the executive suite knew about my legal background. Occasionally, they came to me with questions. The reference file I needed was in a box of personal documents I'd stashed in a storage closet near my desk. I drove to the office. The building was quiet, just a few scattered lights on various floors. I badged into the executive level, retrieved the file, and was heading back toward the elevator when I heard something. A chair scraping. A low laugh. Coming from Bianca's office. I moved closer. The heavy mahogany door was slightly ajar, warm light spilling through the gap. Victor's voice. Relaxed. Familiar. That was a brilliant move. They won't see it coming until it's too late. Looks like another all-night. Should I order something from the cafe downstairs? Bianca sounded looser than she had in weeks. Good. Do that. And double-check the final data points for the morning call with the German team. Of course. A pause. Victor's tone shifted, dropping into something more personal. You've been at this since lunch. Black coffee on an empty stomach is a terrible idea. Let me get you some warm milk instead. Another pause. Longer.
Fine, Bianca said.
I heard movement, footsteps approaching the door. I stepped back, slipped into the break room, and pulled the door nearly shut. Through the crack, I watched Victor walk past. He was smiling to himself, a private, almost tender expression, adjusting his cuff as he headed for the elevator bank. I waited a few minutes, then left. In the parking lot, I didn't start the engine right away. My mind replayed the scene on a loop. The ease in their voices. The casual intimacy of warm milk. The way Bianca had said fine. Not the way she addressed a subordinate, but the way she used to talk to me years ago, when I was the one showing up with small comforts at midnight. When did that stop? When did she stop needing me to bring the milk? When did she stop noticing whether I was even in the room? I got home after 1. She still wasn't back. No message this time. I took a shower, sat down at my desk, logged into an encrypted cloud drive, and pulled up one final document, a comprehensive personal financial report. Every asset, every investment, every paper trail meticulously organized. The kind of document that would make a forensic accountant weep with joy. It told a clear story, one of independent wealth accumulated quietly over 5 years, entirely separate from Bianca's money, entirely within the bounds of the prenuptial agreement. I made a phone call. Vincent Chow. It's Lucian Crown. The last supplemental materials are in your encrypted inbox. Tomorrow morning, please courier the final divorce agreement to both Bianca Wren's office at Whitmore Group and Diana Liang's residence. The voice on the other end was crisp and unflappable. Understood, Mr. Crown. The terms are exactly as specified. Your documentation on the separate property claims is ironclad. You've waived any stake in Ms. Wren's premarital and postmarital appreciation assets while correctly asserting ownership of investment holdings acquired independently during the marriage. The evidence chain is complete. Also, your negotiations with Sterling and Cross regarding the position are finalized. They're awaiting your formal acceptance. Good. Thank you. I hung up, shut down the computer. Outside, the sky was bleeding from black to gray. A new day, the last day of my marriage. Bianca came home at 8 in the morning. She looked wrecked, dark circles, hair slightly disheveled, but her eyes were bright with adrenaline. The merger must have cleared its final obstacle. When she saw me sitting at the dining table, finishing a quiet breakfast, she paused. You're up early, she said, slipping off her heels. The platinum Birkin landed carelessly on the sofa. Couldn't sleep. I drained the last of my milk. Nice morning. She moved to the table, sat across from me, pressed her fingers to her temples. God, what a marathon. But we cracked it. Victor was indispensable. His negotiation strategy was surgical. The admiration in her voice was effortless. I didn't respond. I carried my dishes to the sink. She seemed to register the silence as something heavier than fatigue. Oh, by the way, last night was insane. I just crashed in the office rest suite. Meant to text. It's fine. I turned on the faucet, rinsed my glass. I'm used to it. Water roared into the basin. She was quiet for a moment. So, plans for today? Mom called this morning. Wants us to come for lunch. Celine and her boyfriend will be there. I have plans. I shut off the water, dried my hands, turned to face her. What kind of plans? She frowned slightly, a reflexive twitch. Lucian, if this is about me missing dinner again, I already explained. The merger is at a critical point. It's not like I was out partying. Bianca. Her name, spoken flat and quiet, cut through whatever she'd been about to say next.
She stopped.
I walked back to the table. From the chair beside me, I lifted a plain manila envelope. I pulled out 2 documents and placed them in front of her. The first was a formal letter of resignation. Departmental approval had already been routed. HR had signed off. Only the CEO's signature line remained blank. The second was a divorce agreement. Bianca's eyes dropped to the papers. For a long second, her expression didn't change. Then I watched her pupil's contract. Her whole body went rigid, the exhaustion in her face hardening into something closer to shock. "What is this?" Her voice came out strangled. Her fingers curled against the tablecloth. "I'm resigning, and we're getting divorced." She shot to her feet. The chair scraped back with an ugly screech. She snatched up the divorce agreement, flipping through the pages with shaking hands, her face going paler with every line. "You're walking away with nothing? You want a divorce?" She stared at me, incredulous, furious, bewildered.
Why?
"Because of..." She stopped. The realization hit her mid-sentence. Her eyes widened. I stayed silent. "Last night." Her voice pitched up. "Victor? Lucian, this is insane. There's nothing between us. We were working." I called my male secretary into my office to discuss a multi-billion-dollar deal. "That's what this is about." That. She was trembling, offended, outraged. The sheer absurdity, from her perspective, seemed to genuinely floor her. "If that's what you need to believe," I said, "then sure." I picked up the cardboard box I'd packed earlier. "The terms are straightforward."
I've already signed.
"It's Monday. The clerk's office is open. If you're free, we can finalize everything this morning."
Now.
She practically spat the word. Her eyes searched my face like she was seeing a stranger. "Lucian, what the hell has gotten into you? Did my mother say something? Did Celine? Is someone in the office spreading rumors? Tell me and I'll deal with it." "It's not about anyone else." I moved toward the door. "This is my decision." "Stop right there." She crossed the room and blocked my path, breathing hard. Up close, I could see the fine tremor in her jaw, the sheen of moisture threatening to crack her composure. She was angry, but beneath the anger, there was something else. Something that looked almost like fear. "You owe me an explanation," she said, voice low and fierce. 5 years. 5 years of marriage. You're going to throw that away because my secretary worked late with me? That's a joke, Lucian. You know how ridiculous that sounds. I stopped, looked into her eyes, those sharp, brilliant eyes that dominated boardrooms and intimidated rivals and never, not once in 5 years, really saw me. "I've spent 5 years waiting for you to notice me," I said. My voice was calm, steady, utterly devoid of heat. Not the husband, not the household manager, not the emotional support accessory.
Me.
Lucian Crown. My expertise. My ambitions. My dignity. My needs as a separate human being. And what did you see? A piece of furniture that fit nicely into the corner of your life. You picked it up when you needed it, dusted it off, put it back. You and your family treated my sacrifices like my job description. And then you told me I should be grateful. Victor is just a symbol. He made me realize what you actually value. It's not a partner. It's a weapon for your business and a caretaker for your home. I failed at being both. Or maybe I just stopped wanting to be either. That's not true. Her voice cracked. Lucian, I never. The papers are on the table. I stepped past her. Sign them or don't. The divorce is happening either way. My attorney will be in touch. I pulled open the door. Cool autumn air rushed in. Lucian, she stumbled after me. Her heels clattered down the front steps. She grabbed at the car door, fingers curling around the handle, knuckles blanching. Her face, God, that face. Always so composed, so calculating. Now it was coming apart. Anger, confusion, and something deeper. Something that looked like the ground cracking open beneath her feet. "Because of last night?" she repeated.
It was almost a plea.
As if hearing me say yes would somehow make the world make sense again. "Because I worked late with Victor?" I looked at her, at the perfect makeup and the expensive suit and the trembling shoulders that even all that armor couldn't steady. "Yes," I said. "That's why." I pulled the door shut. The engine turned over. In the rearview mirror, she was frozen, hand still outstretched. A statue of someone who just realized the ground she'd been standing on for 5 years wasn't ground at all. It was thin air. I drove away from the courthouse district, and merged into the morning rush. Horns blared. An AM radio host rattled off stock prices. The surreal stillness of the last 10 minutes dissolved into the ordinary chaos of the city. My phone buzzed. Bianca's name on the screen. Then again. Then again. Then her mother's name. Her sister's. I let them all ring, switched the phone to silent, and tossed it onto the passenger seat. I was heading downtown. Central Business District. The skyline here was all glass and steel and ambition, towers built by people who never stopped moving, never looked back. I pulled into the underground garage of a building that scraped the clouds. Reserved parking. The car beside mine was a black Maybach, understated and silent. The elevator ride to the top took 40 seconds. The doors opened onto a vast, minimalist lobby. Cold gray tones. Not a single unnecessary detail. The receptionist, a poised young woman in a tailored suit, rose from her desk the moment she saw me. Mr. Crown. Good morning. Mr. Chow and Mr. Sterling are in the conference room. Thank you. I crossed the floor. Associates and paralegals glanced up as I passed. Curious, respectful. Some of them recognized me. Some of them had heard rumors. I kept walking. In the conference room, 2 men stood to greet me. Vincent Chow, my attorney, mid-50s, steady hands, the quiet confidence of someone who dismantled empires in court. Beside him, Harrison Sterling, early 40s, wire-rimmed glasses, managing partner of Sterling and Cross's Asia-Pacific division, and the man whose offer letter I'd kept in a locked drawer for 5 years. Lucian. Vincent gestured to a stack of documents. Final version of the divorce agreement, incorporating your latest asset disclosures. The full package was couriered to Bianca Ren and Diana Leong 30 minutes ago. I flipped through the pages. Clean terms. Irrefutable logic. The agreement waived any claim on Bianca's premarital wealth, Whitmore Group equity, and family assets. It simultaneously asserted my ownership of investment holdings accumulated independently during the marriage, assets whose growth trajectory had quietly outpaced anything the Ren family would have imagined possible. Harrison. I turned to the other man. He smiled, adjusting his glasses. It's been a long wait. The co-head position in cross-border M&A and complex commercial disputes has been held open for you. Your track record, even before all this, spoke for itself. And I suspect your years inside Whitmore Group have given you some unique perspective on how their empire operates. He didn't need to spell it out. I'd spent 5 years in Bianca Ren's inner circle, however peripherally. I knew where the bodies were buried. I knew the vulnerabilities, the soft spots, the patterns of thinking that governed her decisions. I wasn't going to weaponize that knowledge, but the market understood its value. I'll need a week to wrap up personal matters, I said. Take 2 if you need them. The office is ready. Best view in the building. Your team will need time to assemble anyway. A knock at the door. The receptionist leaned in, expression carefully neutral. Mr. Crown, there's a situation in the lobby. Bianca Run is downstairs. She's insisting on seeing you immediately. No appointment. She's agitated. Vincent looked at me. I straightened my cuffs. Let her come up. We're overdue for this conversation. It was time to settle every account. Bianca burst into the conference room like a storm front. Her hair was wind-torn. Her makeup, flawless just hours ago, had eroded under stress and sleeplessness. The designer jacket hung crooked, as if she'd thrown it on mid-sprint. In her hand, crumpled and creased, was the divorce agreement my lawyer had delivered. She pulled up short when she saw the 2 men flanking me. Her eyes swept over Vincent Chow, then Harrison Sterling, their suits, their presence, the unmistakable gravity of serious players. The outraged momentum she'd carried into the room hit a wall. Her expression shifted. Anger didn't vanish, but it recalibrated, became wary, calculating. Lucian. Her voice was raw but controlled now. What exactly do you think you're doing? Divorce papers. Lawyers. This production. She gestured at the conference room, the skyline beyond the windows. All of this because of some paranoid fantasy about Victor? I didn't answer right away. I nodded to Vincent and Harrison. Give us a few minutes. They rose, nodded politely to Bianca, and left. The door clicked shut. Bianca stepped forward and slammed the divorce agreement onto the polished conference table. The sound cracked through the room. Her finger jabbed at the asset division clause. You're walking away with nothing? Is that supposed to make me feel guilty? Is this some kind of negotiation tactic? She was fighting to keep her voice level, but the edges frayed with every word. The prenup is ironclad. You don't get to pull a stunt like this and walk away with a cent of my money. I pulled out a chair,
Sat down.
gestured for her to do the same. She didn't move. Bianca, I said, calm as a deposition. Read the agreement again. I'm not claiming any of your premarital assets. Not your equity. Not your family's money. Not the marital appreciation on any of it. I'm walking away from all of that. Then what is this? She demanded. A tantrum? 5 years, Lucian. Did I starve you? Did I leave you in rags? What did you want that I didn't provide? You're burning our marriage to the ground over a misunderstanding, and I don't even understand what I'm supposed to have done wrong. A home, I said quietly. You keep using that word. Our home. Our marriage. But it wasn't a home, Bianca.
It was a support contract.
I was staff, an emotional concierge who also managed the logistics. And the job came with a monthly stipend your mother called pocket money. I never. You did. I met her eyes. Every time you didn't push back when your mother belittled me. Every time you let Celine mock me at your own dinner table. Every time you talked about my sacrifice like it was a favor you'd done me. 5 years. My law degree became an embarrassment to be managed. My career ambitions became an inconvenience. My dignity became collateral damage in a family project I was never really part of. Her lips parted. No sound came out. Victor, I continued, was just the last straw. He represents the kind of person you actually respect. Smart. Driven. Someone you see as an equal. I was never that. I was the person who fetched warm milk while the equals did real work. That's not fair. Her voice had gone thin. Victor is a colleague. He helps me run the company. You're my husband. Am I? I pulled a slim folder from my case and slid it across the table. Read this. She hesitated, then flipped it open. A summary of independent investment holdings. Fund names. Equity stakes. A holding company registered overseas. The kind of document that told a story in numbers. Her eyes moved down the page. And then stopped. And widened. Starfire Ventures, that early-stage fund. You were a limited partner? Her voice had dropped to something barely audible. She turned the page. Phantom Visions Series B lead investor. LX Capital. That was you. She knew these names. Everyone in her world did. They were quiet success stories. Investments that had multiplied in value. Vehicles whose backers had remained discreet. Anonymous. Untouchable. Bianca had tried to get meetings with some of them. She'd been turned away. Now she was staring at proof that the man she'd been calling not ambitious enough had been running circles around her network for years. I didn't confirm or deny. I just let the documents speak. These assets are mine, I said. Acquired independently. No commingling. No Whitmore Group funds. No connection to you or your family. The evidence is comprehensive. My attorney will make it available to your team. She staggered back a step. Her hand found the edge of the table and gripped it like a lifeline. The woman who'd stared down hostile boards and billion-dollar negotiations looked utterly unmoored. You've been all this time. She couldn't finish the sentence. At first, I wasn't planning anything, I said. At first, I genuinely wanted to be what you needed. I let go of my career, my network, my pride. I tried to make that life work. But you and your family made it clear that my value was conditional. I was useful as long as I stayed in my box. The moment I wanted more, I became a problem. So, I built an exit. Quietly.
Carefully.
Those investments started small, leftover savings, consulting work I did on the side. Deals I researched late at night while you were in yet another meeting. They kept me sane. They reminded me that I still had a brain. That I was still Lucian Crown, not just Bianca's husband. She was shaking her head slowly, like she was trying to wake up from a nightmare. You planned this. All of it. The divorce. The lawyers. The new job. She glanced toward the door where Harrison Sterling had exited. You've been lining up your next move while you were busy building your empire. Yes. I leaned forward. You're not the only one who can think strategically, Bianca. The difference is, I wasn't playing against you. I was just making sure I had somewhere to land when this finally collapsed. She flinched. You want to call it calculation? Fine. It was calculation. Self-preservation. I'm not going to apologize for it. I stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the city. The divorce terms are simple. I take what's mine. You keep what's yours. No alimony. No drama. We go our separate ways cleanly. You can tell the press whatever you want. Irreconcilable differences. Mutual decision. I don't care. Behind me, she was silent. Or I added, we can do this the hard way. Litigation.
Discovery.
Public hearings where your mother's recorded comments about my proper place get played in open court. Where Whitmore Group's internal dynamics get dragged into the light. Where every reporter in the financial press gets to ask why the CEO's husband had to build an escape fund in secret just to leave with his dignity intact. I turned back. She was pale as bone china. I don't want a war, I said, but I'm fully prepared for one. The silence stretched. Somewhere in the building, a phone rang and went to voicemail. Bianca's shoulders dropped. It was a small movement, barely perceptible, but something in her crumbled with it. The indignation, the disbelief, the desperate need to frame this as my failure, my paranoia, my betrayal. It all eroded, and underneath was just exhaustion. I'll sign, she said. Her voice was hollow. Your assets, the resignation, all of it. Thank you. A knock. Vincent's voice. Mr. Crown, apologies for interrupting, but we have a situation in the lobby. Diana Leong and Celine Run are downstairs. They're demanding to come up. Bianca's eyes snapped to the door. Something that might have been dread crossed her face. I looked at her. Do you want them here? She hesitated, then slowly shook her head. I'll handle it, I said. Vincent can walk you through the remaining terms in the smaller conference room. She met my eyes. For one long moment, she seemed to be searching for something, some remnant of the man she'd married, some trace of the compliance she'd taken for granted. I don't know if she found it. She nodded once and followed Vincent out. I straightened my shirt, still the same modest button-down I'd worn that morning, and walked to the elevator. Time to face the rest of them. Diana Leong was causing a scene in the lobby. She stood at the reception desk in a silk cheapao, a strand of pearls at her throat, crocodile skin handbag tucked under her arm. Her voice carried across the marble floors like a blade. Do you have any idea who I am? My daughter is the CEO of Whitmore Group. My son-in-law is up there. I demand to be let through immediately. The receptionist's smile didn't waver. Ma'am, I understand. But without an appointment or confirmation from a current occupant, building policy prohibits. Policy. Celine cut in, shrill. She was dressed in head-to-toe designer, her makeup Instagram perfect. This isn't a policy situation. This is a family emergency. Call your supervisor.
Mom.
Celine. Both women spun at the sound of my voice. Diana's expression twisted from imperious fury to targeted outrage. She marched toward me, finger raised. Lucian Crown, what do you think you're doing? You ambush my daughter with divorce papers? You disappear? You drag our family's private matters into some law firm's conference room like a cheap mediation drama? Are you out of your mind? Celine fell in behind her mother, arms crossed, radiating contempt. Unbelievable. You know, we always knew you were a gold digger, but this is a new level. Waiting 5 years to make your move? What's the play here? Shake Bianca down for a settlement. Because the prenup says otherwise. Their voices ricocheted off the marble. People in the lobby were starting to stare. I didn't raise my voice. There's a coffee shop next door. Let's continue this conversation there. There's nothing to discuss, Diana snapped. You're going back upstairs. You're going to apologize to Bianca, and you're going to tear up those ridiculous papers. Couples fight. You don't run to a divorce lawyer every time you get your feelings hurt. Yeah, Celine added. Let's be honest, Lucian. Without Bianca, what are you? A former lawyer who hasn't practiced in 5 years. An office assistant with a rusty degree. You think you're going to walk out and land on your feet? You should be on your knees thanking this family. I smiled, just slightly. Both women hesitated. Something in that smile didn't match their script. What am I? I repeated. Interesting question. In 5 years, neither of you ever bothered to find out. I gestured again toward the coffee shop. The divorce terms are being finalized upstairs. If you have legal objections, you're welcome to direct them through your attorneys to Vincent Chow. If you want to vent, we can do that over coffee. If you'd prefer to keep shouting in this lobby, I paused, glanced at the security guard who'd begun drifting in our direction. I'll let the building handle it. Diana's face went crimson. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Celine looked genuinely thrown. The quiet, compliant brother-in-law she remembered didn't talk like this. After a tense beat, Diana turned on her heel and stalked toward the cafe.
Fine.
Let's hear what nonsense you've cooked up. In the private booth, Diana wasted no time. I want to know what you think you're doing, Lucian. Bianca is at the most critical point of her career, and you choose now to blow up her personal life? What kind of man does that? One who's done being invisible, I said. She blinked. You want to talk about what kind of man I am? Let's talk. For 5 years, I managed Bianca's household, memorized her schedule, kept her fed, kept her steady, remembered every birthday and anniversary and preference, so she never had to think about any of it. I absorb your insults and Celine's mockery and the entire company's pity. And in return, you called it pocket money and told me I should be grateful. Celine started to interject. I cut her off. You're dating Grant Wu. His family runs well-built materials. Their company supplied finishes for Whitmore's luxury condo project last year. Celine's mouth snapped shut. The color drained from her face. Some of their environmental compliance certifications looked a little creative. I continued. I came across the paperwork in the executive office. Nothing official, just an anomaly I noticed. I'm sure the regulators wouldn't find anything if they looked. But if someone were to suggest they look, that's slander, Celine whispered. It's not slander if it's true, I said. And I'm not making any threats. I'm just pointing out that we all have things we'd rather keep private. This divorce can be quiet.
Clean.
No press, no leaks, no drama. Or it can be very, very messy. The choice is yours. Diana had gone still. The anger was still there, but it had cooled into something harder and more watchful. For the first time in 5 years, she was looking at me like an opponent. You think you can just walk away, she said slowly. Take your little investments, whatever they are, and start over. And we're supposed to just let you. You're not letting me do anything. I'm informing you of what's already in motion. I set my coffee cup down with a soft click. The agreement is fair. I'm taking nothing that isn't mine. If you fight it, you'll lose. And the cost of fighting will be higher than anything you think you're protecting. I stood up, left cash on the table. We're done here. Neither of them spoke as I walked away. When I got back upstairs, Bianca was standing alone at the window in the main conference room. She'd composed herself, shoulders straight, chin up, but there was a fragility to the posture, like a porcelain vase that had been glued back together. She heard my footsteps and turned. Her eyes were red. I've transferred Victor to the London office, she said. Permanent relocation. He left this morning. I felt a flicker of something. Not satisfaction. Maybe just weariness. That wasn't necessary. He's good at his job. I know. She swallowed.
But I needed to do something.
I needed to show you I was serious. Bianca. I know. Her voice cracked. I know it's too late. You already said that. You've been saying it for years, and I wasn't listening. She turned back to the window. The city sprawled beneath us, indifferent. The agreement is fine.
I'll sign.
Your assets are yours. The resignation is processed. HR will handle your final paycheck. Thank you. She didn't turn around. If I had done one thing differently, she said. 5 years ago, if I had stood up to my mother, if I had supported your career instead of swallowing it into mine, would we be here? I looked at her silhouette against the glass. For a moment, I remembered the woman I'd met at that alumni event. Sharp, magnetic, alive with possibility. She was still in there somewhere, buried under board seats and quarterly earnings and a family that had taught her that love was a transaction. It doesn't matter, I said. We're here now. She nodded. Her reflection in the window nodded with her.
Go, she said.
I'll have my assistant mail the decree once it's finalized. Take care of yourself, Lucian.
I didn't say goodbye.
Some things don't need closing words. I walked out. Vincent and Harrison were waiting down the hall. Harrison extended a hand. Welcome aboard. Ready to get started? I shook his hand. Ready. A week later, it was done. The divorce decree arrived in a plain white envelope. I opened it, looked at the official seal, and set it in a drawer alongside the prenuptial agreement it had replaced. The final paycheck from Whitmore Group landed in my account, calculated to the exact dollar per labor regulations. Nothing more, nothing less. My personal assets were formally recognized and separated. The sum was substantial, more than substantial, enough to make my arrival at Sterling and Cross feel less like a fresh start and more like a homecoming. On my first day, I stood in my new corner office. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A view of the entire financial district. On my desk, a case file for a cross-border acquisition, complex, high stakes, exactly the kind of work I'd been built for. I led the first client meeting that afternoon. A conference room full of executives and their in-house counsel. I walked them through the regulatory exposure, the jurisdictional pitfalls, the negotiated solutions. My English was flawless, my analysis precise. By the end of the hour, the client was leaning forward in their chair, asking for my card. Afterward, a junior associate stopped me in the hallway. Mr. Crown, that was incredible. I've never seen someone break down a deal structure that fast. Thank you. I meant it. Stick around. There's more where that came from. She grinned and hurried off. I walked back to my office, loosening my tie. The phone on my desk was already lighting up with messages. Old law school contacts resurfacing, headhunters circling, a journalist who wanted to profile my career trajectory for a legal trade publication. I deleted the journalist's message and answered the ones that mattered. Life settled into a rhythm. Mornings at the office. Afternoons in strategy sessions. Evenings spent reading, researching, or occasionally meeting friends I hadn't seen in years. People who'd known me before the marriage, before the slow erasure. They said I looked different, lighter, sharper. I was. Occasionally, I'd glimpse Bianca on a financial news broadcast. Whitmore's merger went through, but the press reported more turbulence than expected. Regulatory hurdles. A rival bidder no one had anticipated. Her face on screen was still beautiful, still commanding, but the old invincibility had worn thin. She looked like someone who'd learned that empires could crack. Word filtered through the grapevine that she no longer worked with close male associates. That she'd thrown herself into the business with a ferocity that bordered on compulsive. That Diana was already trying to arrange introductions to suitable men from appropriate families. Bianca had shut down every single one. None of that was my concern anymore. 3 months into the new job, I worked late on a contract revision. By the time I finished, the office was empty, the cleaning crew the only other souls on the floor. I shut down my computer, grabbed my jacket, and headed for the elevator. Passing the window at the end of the hallway, I paused. The city glittered below. 1,000,000 lights in 1,000,000 windows. I remembered another window, the one in a living room where I used to sit alone, watching television footage of a wife who was never coming home, scraping uneaten food into the trash. That man felt like a stranger now. Someone I used to know. Someone I'd climbed out of. I exhaled. My breath fogged the glass for a moment, then vanished. The elevator took me down. In the parking garage, I unlocked my car, still modest, still paid for with my own money, and pulled out into the late-night traffic. Jazz played low on the stereo. I rolled the window down. The air was cool and clean. In the rearview mirror, the towers of the financial district shrank behind me. Among them somewhere was the building that housed Whitmore Group. Bianca's light might still be on. Or maybe not. It didn't matter. The road ahead was wide and straight. Streetlights swept past in a steady rhythm. The night was clear. I pressed the accelerator and drove into it.